What's up, Starcraft fans? This video is brought to you by Endarthe, who is supporting my Patreon. Pulse current tier supporters are higher are guaranteed one video redemption per month. This month, he requested Wiki review. This time we're doing Hot and Horner, who apparently have one wiki for the both of them. That's sharing, and sharing is caring. We have today Edwin Home in the call with us today. How are you, Edwin Home?
I'm doing quite well.
Awesome. That makes one of us. I'm on 3 hours of sleep. I'm so excited for this. 3 hours of sleep. Let's go. So, we are doing Han and Horner. Are you ready to comment on the first page?
Yep.
All right. What do you think?
Well, the first thing that jumped out to me is the fact that when they're listing the units, for Mirahan specifically, they talk about Reapers and what they can do, and Hellbats and Hellions and what they can do, and then just like no mention of Widow Mines. So apparently they don't think those are even worth making, which was a little funny to me. The other thing was the Thea Ravens talking about how they can see enemies through the fog of war, allowing strike fighters to precision strike them. And I'm like, I don't think I've ever done that on purpose, at least ever. Like, why? That feels like a pain to move the Raven up and then strike fighter. And yeah, I was never bothered with that.
I think what it means is not see the enemy units per se, but you can see the radar. You can see the red exclamation mark when the
Right. Yeah. I've just never. I guess I'm assuming the same with you. It's like I know where everything is generally. By the time I
that's
get my strike fighters, I'm not like, where are the enemy buildings? I just kind of look in the fog of war, and I'm like, that's where the base is.
I'm
So
guessing it's not just for buildings. Oh my god, I'm talking like AI. It's not just for buildings. It's also for targeting dangerous units like siege tanks, immortals. I guess maybe immortals sometimes. Infestors is what I meant to say. High Templar, which deal tremendous splash damage, which will destroy your Mirahan units. And once you take those guys out, your other units will be able to engage much more efficiently. That's probably what it means. And I agree with your point about the Reapers, Hellbats, and Hellions and not mentioning the Widow Mines. But I'd also like to mention that it's only the Hellbats that ignite enemy units upon death and cause them to run and run in fear. When Hellions go bye-bye, they stim your army instead. So it's not for both of these units. It's only for Hellbats. Hellions have a different effect. Anyway, that's it. Yeah, let's move on. Here we have the sidebar info for Hot and Horner. What do you think?
I think one thing I feel like I've noticed with a lot of these wiki reviews is the roles sort of are not actually very helpful. Like it'll be like I think Stukov, it was like mass infested, and I'm like, well, what kind of role is that? It's similar here where it's like kinetic orbital strikes. I'm like, I feel like roles should be like better at offense, good defense, stuff like that. Where this is like air interdiction.
Exactly. I'm like, what does
Okay,
interdiction even
like,
mean?
it feels like they're just kind of throwing in like little buzzwords about like what they have. They have orbital strikes. That's their role. Well, what are orbital strikes good for? Like, I don't know, base sniping, stuff like that. But I mean, it's not a huge deal. But I have noticed that where it's like the rules don't actually tend to tell me much. As far as the
Yes.
strengths and weaknesses, I do kind of agree. It's funny because they have like a slow ramp up time, but also like a quick one in some ways, where like you can get your initial like Reaper set up with your galleons pretty quickly, but you have like a gap between your initial power where you have the galleons and actually having like a decent army. You're kind of like a slow mid game, I feel like, with them as far as the ramp up time.
I
Other than
feel
that, yeah, I
yep.
mean everything seems pretty on point.
Yeah, I feel like I definitely agree with your comment on the role. Definitely agree. The role here feels like it should be something more like you snipe void rifts. That's your role. You set off the enemy mag mines. That's your role. You destroy buildings on dead of night. That's your role. It's saying things like kinetic orbital strikes. What does that even mean? It doesn't tell me anything about what Hot and Horner does. It tells me what they have, but not what they do, right? That's definitely
Yep.
the thing I would agree with. On the strengths, I sort of disagree with exceptional firepower. They have okay firepower, in my opinion. I could be wrong, but I don't think they're exceptional firepower wise. I also hard disagree with expendable units. I don't think they even have cheap units for what those units do. For 1v1, for regular brutal, yes, those units are fine, but in mutations, those units become more expensive for what they do and how long they actually survive. Unless you have like pro gamer level micro, those units probably won't do how much you pay them to do. For example, 750 minerals worth of Reapers probably won't get you as far as 750 worth of minerals fed to an Ascendant. I think the Ascendant will still give you more bang for your buck than the Reapers, for example. Maybe it's just me, but I don't think the units are expendable for what worth they provide. Agree with our slow ramp up time. Agree with lack survivability, and the lack survivability is the main reason why I say they just really aren't that expendable for what they do. Yeah, do you agree? Am I tripping?
Yeah, I know when I see the exceptional firepower, I just think of like most people who are like avid Han and Horner defenders. Their first thing is like, but have you seen how much damage a Reaper can do if you have one Reaper that's been buffed to the maximum by dead Hellions and you have 190 supply of Horner units? It's like, well, I mean, that is good firepower, I
That is good
guess, but it's not
firepower.
exactly realistic. But I do think of that, so I'm like, I guess for me it was like, well, it's close enough. They do deal a lot of damage, but yeah, the problem is as soon as there's one High Templar that you miss or one fungal that you miss, now you've lost 40 Reapers, and they're not that expendable. I assume they
Exactly.
say expendable because they're thinking of the salvage, but the salvage, it's nice and all, but it's one of those things where it's like it's nice, but you should never be like relying on it, It's like it's helpful if it's there. It's like health insurance, It's like you get it and you hope you never need it.
That's
Like if
true.
you're relying on your health insurance, you have big problems probably.
Oh, that's true. Okay, moving on. Next, we have mastery descriptions. What do you think about these?
Well, these are, kind of just descriptions. So yes, they're true. I think. I think they're all right.
Nobody bothers to check. We just say, yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think that's correct numbers. I could be wrong. I guess there's the Magmines one is a little misleading with the way the minus and plus signs are used. It's like -1 to a maximum of +30, but other than that, yeah, everything
Oh, yeah, that's
seems
actually
good.
true. Yeah, good ad, good catch, good eye. All right, prestigious.
Yeah, these all look right too. Not a lot to say about these ones. These all look correct.
All right, strategies overview. What do you think?
It's Yeah, it's mostly right, except there is the whole cheap expendable mercenary units. It's like they're really not that expendable. You are going to end up expending them most likely, but it hurts. That's I think their main problem is just. I feel like maybe if salvage chance was just stronger in general, that might help Han and Horner a lot. But it's just hard to like produce over a longer game, especially if there's like any kind of powerful AOE, either via enemy comp or via uh, mutations. So. But yeah, I don't know. Cheap expendable. It's like they are cheap and expendable compared to some other guys' units, I guess. Like they're cheaper and more expendable than Nova's units, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're actually really expendable.
That's
Other than that, yeah, I
probably
think it's fine.
that's probably our biggest gripe about this whole thing. They are presented to be expendable, but that's only true in regular brutal. In mutations, you need to be more
Yep.
cost efficient with your units. I guess they're expendable if you're fighting against a 1v1 army, because the guy who wrote this probably is a 1v1 player. He sees a salvage, oh, that's expendable. But in co-op, you don't trade. You don't trade with Amon. They're expendable if you trade. You don't trade. You need to maintain value and gain more army value over time while still fighting. That doesn't happen with Hot and Horner. That's probably the biggest thing we have to say. And if we're talking expendable, the thing we should have in mind is Zagara, because that's expendable. Her units are literally free. They
Yeah.
have they spawn like Zerglings 4 at a time if you have the first prestige, and they have the evasion thing. That's expendable. Hot and Horny is just 50 a piece. Expensive. That's painful. And you don't trade them. You need to keep value with
And you
them.
can at most make 5 Reapers at a time, whereas Zagara, you can make you can remax on Zerglings in one go in about 5 seconds in theory, right?
That's
Whereas
true.
Han and Horner, at most, you have 5 Galleons.
Regarding your earlier comment about the salvage chance. I think it would be better if you reduced the RNG aspect of it and turned into salvage efficiency, where it's a fixed improvement on the percentage of salvage you get. For example, from 30% you go up to like 80%. That would make it expendable. That would make it really good. Fortunately, we're not there. Let's move on.
Okay, yeah, stronger death chance I think is fine to go with. You can go strike fighter area of effect. I don't typically do that unless you're doing like dead of night runs or whatever. It's nice for getting more buildings with your fighters, but you could go either one really. I don't think it matters a terribly large amount. On power set 2, I guess he's not exactly recommending one over the other. I think I typically just go double salvage chance because the significant other bonuses you don't tend to get those until later in the game when it doesn't matter as much anyways because it's that ramp up time we were talking about. And then the air fleet travel distance, yeah, I mean, I think that's fair enough to go with. The magmine charges though is nice. I mean, I don't know. I feel like if I'm P1, I probably want the magmine charges because air fleet that's like what, a 5 minute cooldown. I feel like you get
Yeah,
like 2 air fleets a game. So I'd probably actually go magmine charges most of the time. At least some. Maybe not, maybe like 15-15 on that one.
I prefer to go Magmine charges and cooldown and arming time 100% of the time because I like playing the first prestige. That's how I really unlock those Magmines. Just have them defend for me instead of using units that are quote unquote expendable, but not really. Magmites are expendable. They are cooldown based. If you don't use them, you lose them. That is expendable. That's why I actually like to use the charges. So they actually hit stuff. They deploy right away. The enemies can shoot them before they activate, and they deal their damage. It's pretty nice. That's actually expendable. For the first one, I actually prefer the airstriker radius. I'm not sure if we necessarily have to agree. I think it's fine to disagree on some points. I prefer the airstriker chance because it when you especially when you get the napalm upgrade, the larger radius of the blast allows you to sometimes not have to target exactly where the void rift is or have to target exactly where the siege tank is when you're trying to weaken enemy defenses before moving in or when you're sniping stuff from the minimap. It's yes, it's nice to have, but also when armies move through a certain choke point, having a larger radius allows you to hit more of the army for fewer shots. That's just my opinion, though. We can disagree. Anyway, moving on. Moving on to prestige recommendations and strategies. What do you think about the first prestige?
Yeah, it's relatively accurate. The much more viable for Magmines thing is funny to me because, like, typically if you say that it's about something where it's like, you wouldn't be making it otherwise, it's like, well, I'm still going to use the Magmines if I'm not on P1. They're just
Exactly.
better. Yeah, it's not like I'm like, well, now I'm not going to use these even though they're free and cost me nothing on the other prestiges. But other than that, yeah, I mean, it seems relatively accurate. Yeah, just skip the Horner units generally. Like, you might make one or two. A Raven, obviously, for detection if you need it. But yeah, I think another point with it is you definitely do want to be making and correctly utilizing your strike fighter platforms to take out siege tanks and AoE units like we were talking about to allow your army to not get ripped through since it is going to be Mira's very very squishy units,
And not expendable at all. Units.
not expendable at all. Yeah.
Like, hard to agree with that. That's pretty much all I wanted to say. It's mostly accurate. We still want to use the air strikers to take out the dangerous units so that the rest of our army can come in. And agreed. As for areas we want to maximize the Raven charges. How about the second prestige?
Yeah, it's relatively accurate. The final lines where it's like this final prestige is more easily used on maps where the player can expand quickly, and on maps where Mira's fragile, low-cost units are undesirable. It's like, well, actually, uh,
Well, actually,
other commanders are more easily used on those maps, I would say. But obviously, I do love wing commanders, but it's even weaker than P1. So in reality, unless you're really wanting to play Han and Horner, wing commanders is not going to be a buff, but it is fun. Their battle cruisers and whatnot are enjoyable. But I do agree with the galleons and everything. I do find that as long as you aren't in a super pressing early game scenario, you can still make a pretty good amount of units off of the galleons with just two. Because I don't, at least I do not tend to have the money to produce off of all five galleons at once. But it does come into play if you do lose your whole Han army. It's going to take a long time to get that back.
Yeah, the only thing I would say for Wing Commanders, aside from what you said, is that there are specific use cases. For example, when Fatal Attraction, no, not Fatal Attraction, what was that? Diffusion. When diffusion is involved, you don't want to go Mirahanyas. They will just unalive themselves before they get
Hmm.
pretty much any value done. So you definitely want to go mass battle cruisers. And of course, your airstrikers. That's your bread and butter as Han and Horner. That's how you gain value over time, your airstrikers. But units wise, if you need to push in, there was this mutation. I believe it was magnetic attraction or something, where there were mag mines and there were diffusion or fatal attraction, something like that. Han and Horner's best option was battle cruisers with the second prestige because they have enough range and the ability to teleport, so you can actually get enough of them to be able to push into the Thrasher area. That's I believe the best use case for the second prestige. Moving on, what do you think about this third prestige?
Yeah, they are generally right. I mean, the important line of this is not recommended for general play is there. So we're kind of good on that front. I think specifically mentioning that this is good on void thrashing is wrong because void thrashing is like a really short map. So
Yes,
you're basically just wasting time going P3 because you're just going to make the map take longer than if you just built 10 platforms with P1.
exactly.
Uh, yeah. Other than that, I mean, yeah, Dead of Night again is another one where it's like, I mean, it's what you can be done by like 15, 16 minutes probably or earlier with bombing platforms, depending on how much your ally helps.
All of them,
Unless you go
honestly.
this prestige, yeah, all the maps. Yeah, I think, yeah, just in general, I mean, I guess Scythe of Amon would be the biggest argument because people do tend to take longer on that one. But this is another one where it's like you're only playing this one if it's like when you go and get really hot, spicy wings somewhere and they make you sign the waiver in advance. That's like, I recognize that I'm eating food that's hotter than humans are supposed to eat, anyways. It's kind of like you need to sign a waiver of like, I recognize that I am gaining no benefit by using this prestige prior to playing. So, yeah, I think that's relatively accurate.
You signed the waiver that says, I watched the tier list. I know they're in D tier. And it was not recommended to use this prestige, even with that. And I'm doing it anyway because I hate myself. That's the caveat that you apply when you use this prestige. The only argument, in my opinion, is not map based. It's mutator based. If you get mutator that prolongs the map, or you get lucky envelopes, that is pretty much the only time you go this prestige. Otherwise, you're really much better off using the 10 air strikers on the first prestige or no prestige. That's really it. It's that simple. Moving on. So we move on to the description of. Looks like this is first going to describe Han or Mira Hansi. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to see they finally decided to mention Widow Mines.
A
It is interesting that they say the lack of true defensive options. I think Hellbats really are a true defensive option against most comps. Like on any map where you're having to defend, the only two really that I can say is the infested maps, Dead of Night and Minor Evac. And Hellbats are great on both of those because you're up against infested. Uh, but yeah, I mean it's all relatively accurate. I do like that they mentioned that the Reapers are quite good against buildings because anyone coming over from melee, you may not be aware of the CTG. Reapers used to work the same way with the grenades that they hit the buildings with, and then they changed them in melee to just attack buildings with their pistols, so they're horrible against buildings.
You may
So
not know this at
having that
home.
mentioned in there.
You may not know this at home, but I played Wings of Liberty.
Well, yes, but they had the grenades in Wings of Liberty. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I
They
know.
changed it away from the grenades and to pistols.
I know. Well, they
So,
still did. They
but
still
anyone
did
that
have
comes
the
over from ladder,
pistols. Yeah, they
right?
did still have the pistols in Wings of Liberty. They just had grenades for buildings back then, also.
I know. I'm just saying anyone coming from modern day ladder might look at Reapers and not even be like, "Oh, these are going to be terrible against buildings," because they don't realize they still have good building damage because they do not in melee. So I like that that's mentioned, but yeah, that's all I can really see.
The only thing I would add is on maps like Dead of Night and Minor Evac. I don't even like so many hellbutts. Yes, I will add in hellbutts, but the primary damage dealer for me will be the landed Vikings because they have splash that goes through the enemy into the back line. When you have Melius running at you, those are pretty good. But
Oh
aside
yeah.
from that, hard agree with everything you said. So let's move on. Moving on, we have Humanity's Armada describing Matt Horner's units. What do you think about these ones?
Yeah, the Theo Raven one saying that they are, what was the exact line? Likely one of the most powerful detection units in co-op. Feels like they were on drugs when they wrote that. I don't know. I think,
They're on stim packs.
I mean, and they're useful, but I would not say they're one of the most powerful detection units, especially when things like Super Gary exist. Yeah, it's, I don't know. That's a little
Exactly.
weird, but other than that, I mean, it's all pretty accurate. I think the Sovereign battle cruisers, he talks about after being upgraded to use its mini Yamato cannon, it can shred through high health objectives and enemies. I would like a mention of you probably don't want that on most of the time anyways, because you'd rather have the ATX laser batteries so you're not overkilling Zerglings with 200 damage.
That's true. But again, in those special niche cases where you want to just snipe objectives, thus the Yamato thing is pretty handy. Aside from
Oh, it's
that,
useful, and if you're against Fleet of the Armada or whatever, right? You know, like carriers and whatnot, it's good for sure. But
it's good.
it would be good to see a mention of you might want to switch back sometimes as
That's
well.
also true. That's very useful. Aside from that, I would like to add that for the Ravens, my top three detectors in the game are Super Gary, Nova with the Ghost Visor upgrade, and Omega Worms. Those are my top three. What are yours?
No, yeah, that's probably fair. I think if you're talking about like non-hero ones, it would be what like Nova's Ravens as well. Nova just has really good detection in general.
He does.
Um,
If you're talking about non-hero ones, definitely Zeratul's Watchers are top of the list.
yeah, that's true.
Oh, and Omega Worms, they're not hero either.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, yeah.
So Ravens, I would actually put them closer to the. Am I crazy? I would put them closer to the bottom. No, I guess they have their radar thing, so it doesn't really put them really bad. But the thing is, they don't increase their vision range when they siege up, unlike regular observers and overseers.
Yeah.
So that objectively makes them worse.
Yeah, I feel like maybe they should just have like super cloak when they're sieged, since they can't do anything else anyways, and that might really kind of help them. Because yeah, they, as opposed to Nova's Ravens can deal damage themselves. They can throw up turrets to kind of tank for themselves, and because they're a Nova unit, they just have like much higher health than a base Raven would have. Whereas Thea Ravens have a very small health pool, so they're very easy to get sniped. And obviously, Nova's Ravens can heal themselves and each other. So
Yeah. Vikings also, I'm not sure about the most powerful anti-air option. I still like Wraiths for anti-air. If I'm talking about Hot and Horner. Sure, the anti-air for the Vikings is great, but I'd rather have them landed to deal splash damage, you know? I like splash. Anyway, yeah? You want to you want to
yeah. Oh
disagree?
yeah. I was just gonna say yeah. That well, no, I was just gonna say it's also like they might deal more damage just looking at the numbers, but they are more fragile and they're not cloaked and they're slower. So wraiths are going to be better. They might not kill things as quickly, but they're less likely to die while they're doing it.
Yeah, that's it. So you're agreeing. Nice. All right, moving on. Moving on to the top bar section. Select destructive couple. What do you think about this?
Yeah, I feel like the Magmine section is neglecting to mention like a lot of it's good, but they're like they will rarely serve as the only needed defense, and there needs to be a little unless you're P1 added in there because if you're P1, they can basically handle defense.
Pretty
I
much.
do agree that you will miss like if it's speedlings or whatever, you will probably miss some of them with the Magmines unless you're P1. For the strike fighters, I don't know. I'd like to see a mention of like, the cooldown being double if the strike fighter dies. Maybe would be nice to include in there.
Is that still
Because
true?
that is,
Because
yeah,
I've
yep. It goes up to 2 minutes instead of 1 minute, unless they changed it in the last like 6 months. It's
I
still
don't
true.
really. I don't know. Maybe I'm just hallucinating. But every time I play Void Rifts as Hot and Horner, I never run out of charges of the air strikers. Meaning I have all 10. So does that mean I never have any of my air strikers shot down, or does the 2 minute thing no longer exist? I need to actually I need to take a hard look at this because I feel like it's not. I don't know. I may be imagining things because I
Well, at
never
most
run out
with
of
Void Rift,
charges. Yeah,
it's four at a time, right? Every what's the interval? What's the fastest interval they can be? 60 seconds, 90 seconds?
90 seconds. Four every 90
90
seconds.
seconds.
Yes.
So and you only need two to kill each one.
If
And so
if
you'd have two extras even accounting for that. And an average of 90 seconds, if you lost half of your airstrikers every time, you should still have enough on average, right? Because it's
I like
five with 60,
using
five with 120.
generally I like using three air strikers on the far ones so I can right click it right away, and two on the closer ones so that
No,
I
that's fair.
can yeah so that I can space them out and still have my army chase them if I need to. That's my thinking. Anyway, that's
I do think you're
probably
less likely to lose airstrikers killing void rifts than other things because they're not as likely to spawn. Like, if you're hitting siege tanks, they're probably right next to a bunker full of marines.
that's
Whereas the
true.
void rifts are more likely to be out alone, where they're less likely to have something that'll actually kill the airstrike.
That's true. There's
But I'm
some.
like 99% sure there is still the increased cooldown if you lose them.
I need to test that. There's still a mention here that you should not clump mag mines. Usually, I like to clump mag mines, especially if I'm dealing with a heavily armored enemy composition that requires more than a single set of mag mines to deal with. Maybe I'm just crazy. I like clumping up my mag
It kind
mines.
of depends. Well, like, I mean, yeah, clumping two or three, you probably don't want to clump like 10 sets of mag mines, right? Because then if one Zergling makes it in, then but I also like to do like like a couple mag mines, like a screen forward and then three or four behind that, like a screen back, so like you hit the Zerglings or whatever units are running a little bit ahead of everything, and then you hit the rest with the second set. But there's a lot of different ways you can do that. I would say, yeah, you don't want to do like all of them at once, but definitely you don't want to just do like one. You want probably three or four at least.
Two or three, maybe. Yeah. All right, moving on. Moving on to synergies. So first up, we have Artanis. What do you think about Artanis synergy?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is obviously Guardian Shell interacting with the Reapers and whatnot, and then also the Shield Overcharge is really good as well. The fact that neither of them has good like defense or static defense is a bit sucky for the synergy, but overall, yeah, I think they're a relatively good synergy.
Out of 10, score out of 10.
I give them like a 5 because they're both bad commanders, but they do
Ooh.
synergize well, you know?
In terms of synergy, I think I might give it a 6. I'm a little bit more generous because I do agree that with Shield Overcharge, Mirahans who survive for a lot longer than just giving them Garden Shell. The utility of the Shield Overcharge is much more, in my opinion, useful than Garden Shell because you can just have your army fight for much longer, especially when you're pushing up a difficult base. But I do agree that in terms of defending, both of them kind of suck. So you will get screwed with mutators like Outbreak or Missile Command. Neither of them have great static defense. They will both need to leave armies at home. And for guys like me who thrive on the all army hotkey, that's kind of a no bueno situation. But still 6 out of 10 because I do like the synergy of just taking out units from afar using the air strikers and then pushing with both armies and then using the shield overcharge. 6 out of 10 for me. Karax, what do you think?
I think they're pretty accurate here. They're a pretty good synergy because Karax is obviously amazing on the defense, and then he can use his top bars, and Han and Horner can get him vision quite easily with that. You especially have like oh, I want to hit something in the top left corner. We don't have anything anywhere near there. Well, I can set out an airstrike, and then Karax can call in his
Solar Lance, Purified Beam,
whatever it's called,
Orbital
Solar
Strike.
Lance, yeah, any whatever top bar you want to call in, right? So that's
Oh, and the
nice.
Chrono
Han
Boost!
and or Horner's units and most of Han's units can be hit by Repair Beam, which is nice. Obviously, very nice. Gives you a lot of extra durability. The shell, whatever it's called, that Karax has helps as
Unity
well.
Barrier.
Unity Barrier. I think what we'll see with a lot of these synergies is that the other hero helps Han and Horner a lot, and Han and Horner isn't necessarily doing anything that directly helps them. But Han and Horner does it's you're gonna be able to get vision for your top bars a lot easier. I'd say they're one of the better of the synergies that Han and Horner has. I think Karax is one of the best.
For all of these commanders except two, Hara and Honor's contribution is you fight void rifts. That's it.
Yep. Yeah, basically.
That's it. For Akax, I do agree they have pretty good synergy. I think I would even give this an 8 out of 10. Oh, wait, by the way, score out of 10. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd say probably an 8. Yep.
Yeah, agree. Hot and Horner doesn't have defense. Karak has defense in spades. So you are secure against Outbreak and the missile command. Also, on meteors like COVID, you can just stay home as Hot and Horner and give airstrike vision for Karak's things. For army, I guess you can throw whatever army you have there, but your primary utility as Hot and Horner is destroying things from a distance at home, working at home essentially. Whereas Cax mostly does the hard part, the carrying part of the defense. You can do offense, of course, Hot and Horner. The mutators that they would both kind of struggle against are slim pickings, I guess. Although a bit less for Carax, since he can just move the same probe around. Microtransactions, definitely, both of them will kind of. No, not really. Carax not really will not really struggle against microtransactions. Against something like Poopagators, I guess Carax can kind of defend, but not speed Poopagators. Carax struggles against speed Poopagators. And that's, I think, one of the
But
opportunities. Yeah?
I think Haunted Horn is pretty good against them though, right? Because you have
Exactly.
Hellions with
The
yeah
tar
the
bomb.
barrel. So
Yeah, that I was about to say that's where Hot and Horner can help out Carax. He can have a static defense, while Hot and Horner does have the Hellions that will slow down the poops. So that's actually another rare situation where Carax helps out, or where Horner helps out Carax. Also, if Carax goes for the second prestige, you're gonna have a really cheap army, especially with salvage. So 8 out of 10. Moving on. Vorazun, what do you think about this one?
yeah, I agree. Having the cloaked buffs is nice for the Asteria Wraiths, and then you also get the emergency recall on them, which is pretty nice because you're not likely to lose a ton of Asteria Wraiths, but just having it so you don't lose any at all is pretty nice, especially because they self heal after they recall. So you don't even really have to worry about repairing them up or anything like that. It's more useful than emergency recall is for Vorzun herself, realistically. So that's nice. You can also, in theory, the Widow Mines are also cloaked while they're burrowed, or they're considered cloaked, I'm pretty sure. So they'll emergency recall as well, even if they're not in a dark pylon. So that's handy as
Interesting.
well if you wanted to use it. Other than that, yeah, there's not much else. I think they do work decently together. They're both a little weak on the defense, though. So that's another problem similar to Artanis.
You're talking about the Widow Mines, not the Mag Mines, right?
The Widow Mines, yeah.
All right, that makes sense. For me, I think that's more like a 6 out of 10. I see them similar to an Artana situation. Yes, both of them suck at defense. Both of them will struggle against the Sabutators. That being said, Vorazun's time stop will solve a lot of offense problems for Han and Horner. That being said, it will kind of overlap with the taking out dangerous units with airstrikers sort of deal, because the time stop is a bit less. Not saying not, a bit less useful when you have already the Hot and Horner thing of dealing with the dangerous units before you push in. Still, it's a great deal. You push in, you don't lose any units because the enemies are stopped, and you have a fun time for those beautiful 20 seconds of the game. But still, yes, they will struggle against the same mutators as Vorazun and Artanis. So it's a 6 out of 10 for me. What do you think?
I actually think this is maybe slightly worse than Artanis
Ooh.
because it's most useful if you're playing P2 and you're not likely to be playing P2 with a random ally. You're more likely to be playing P1 where you're not going to be spamming Asteria Wraiths because they cost more and they're, yeah. So you're not getting that big benefit, which I would say is the biggest benefit. So compared to Artanis, where it's like Guardian Shell and Shield Overcharge are really good, whether you're P1, P2, whatever, as Han and Horner. I think it's a little less useful. So I'd actually probably go 4 out of 10.
Ooh. All right. Moving on to Alarak. What do you think?
Yeah, I can agree. I mean, it's basically just like you make Empower Me better in general
Mhm.
because you do have a good amount of mechanical units as well. Obviously, any of his air units are considered mechanical, and half of your ground units roughly are. So that's helpful. In general, the like Havocs and Thea Ravens combine. It's like that's great, but most of the time you're not fighting in the exact same location anyways. You're not like stacking your armies together where it's going to matter. In
Yep.
theory, the Havocs providing increased attack range is nice though for like Reapers and whatnot.
True. What would you give him out of 10?
I would probably say there's not much synergizing happening, right? Like in any real way. So I'd say probably like a two or a three. Probably
Two
like
or
yeah, like a
three?
two. Just
Ooh.
in terms of it's not that they're bad together, it's just I'm not seeing a synergy where it's like you're specifically benefiting me. Like Asteria Wraiths being cloaked and getting a buff because of that is like a synergy, you know?
Well, I do like it when my sacrifice ascendants, when my sacrifice supplicants give some money back. I can really power up my ascendants really quickly. So I think that's the best synergy they have. Also, the Hot and Horner thing of if you have a Void Rift problem, who are you gonna call? Hot and Horner. They're one of the best against Void Rifts. They're both bad against defense. That's true, and they will suffer from pretty much the same weaknesses as Vorazun and Artanis together. Even for stuff like Poopagators, I think Alarak doesn't have a fantastic answer until you get to Wrathwalkers. But again, the Valions are pretty good against Poopagators, so there's that mitigation. For COVID, neither of them have a real answer. I guess Hot and Horner's Air Strikers, but both of them will struggle against COVID. Transmutation, Alarak mostly carries Transmutation. Hot and Horner can provide incremental value by using the airstrikes. Against Void Reanimators, yes, both of them will struggle against Void Reanimators because both of them need defense and neither of them really have a strong one. Okay, yeah, maybe like a 5 out of 10 for me. I'm slightly convinced that the synergy isn't there, but they can help each other. The salvage thing from the sacrifice is also pretty nice, so maybe 5 out of 10 for me. What do you think for Phoenix?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little tough. I feel like you're not getting with PT, you're not getting a ton of benefit from salvage because you were not losing that many units as Phoenix necessarily. I mean, I guess you might be losing your champions a ton, in which case it kind of helps. I guess I'm assuming the salvage chance accounts for the fact that your units cost half as much as Phoenix P2, right? So you're
Yeah,
only getting like
half.
I guess 10% or whatever it is, half of what you would be
Oof.
getting for a regular zealot. So that also means it's not that helpful for P2, which is the most common prestige you're going to be playing with. So I'm going to kind of assume we're playing that. Obviously, Han and Horner, if we're talking about like the big pain points of mutations with things like Void Rifts, Phoenix, in my experience, not good against Void Rifts, especially in the later stages. Han and Horner handles like a breeze. Han and Horner, like against Propagators, like you said, perfectly good at handling the early Poopagators. Phoenix, you have to like redo your entire build to like rush out Warbringer if you want to deal with early propagators. So not having to worry about that if you have a Hun and Horner all, that would help out a lot.
Luxury.
So in that, yeah, in that sense, I think they're pretty good together. In the other sense, they're not very good at defense at all. They're probably like the worst at defense that the two of them have had. Like at least Artanis and Vorzun can, in theory, like cloak wall and make cannons, if you need it. You don't even have. I guess Phoenix does have cannons, doesn't he? But his
He
cannons, I
does.
feel like, are even worse than Vorazun specifically.
So
Um, yeah, I think they're about where Alarak is for me. So I
two.
guess what, like a two or a three for Alarak. So I guess like yeah, like a two for Phoenix as well.
I had
With the Void Rift and the Propagator thing, it's like, well, that's going to be true for every single commander. It's like Hana Horner can handle those
it's
for you.
baseline.
So I'm not putting too much weight on that.
Well, I am because like what else does Hot and Horror do? Basically, I like the conservator thing, protecting Hot and Horror units, and I also like the Kaldalis thing, absorbing the hits instead of Hot and Horror units. So I guess that's some sort of synergy, if they decide to fight together, and the long range of the air strikers allows weaker resistance when you push in with your units. So it's not nothing. I'll still give it like a 6 out of 10. It's not tremendous. It's not even good. It's just, yeah, it's fine. It's fine. For me, yeah, pretty much the same thing as the Artanis. Vora, Zun, Alarak weaknesses, COVID against uh COVID. Double edged against slim pickings, those kind of mutators. Oh, even something like what was that called? Fatal Attraction. Both of them will struggle against Fatal Attraction. Oh wait, Hot and Horner's Air Strikers against Fatal Attraction. So yeah, there we go. Hot and Horner providing some value. Also mutators like what was that? Diffusion. There we go. Diffusion. Both of them will struggle against Diffusion. Again, similar to all the other commanders we mentioned before. Well, not similar, because Vorazun will suffer more. Arak will suffer less because of Ascendants and Wrathwalkers. Guys like Artanis will suffer less. Again, he has ranged units, so yeah, it depends. But I think something like 5 or 6. I'm leaning closer to 6 out of 10 synergy for Phoenix. All right, not mentioned here, Zeratul. What do you think?
Well, Zeratul has got fantastic defense, obviously. He's also got the hero unit himself who can kind of tank for Han and Horner's attacks. Um, they're both pretty good against Void Rifts, generally speaking, but Han and Horner, obviously, the best, really. Beyond
Yes,
that, yeah, I mean, it's the defense and the offense, and then Zeratul can come up for the offense with his defense, which is always kind of nice. Beyond that, there's not like any direct synergies I can think of. You're probably not, unless you're going for a Zeratul army, you're not getting any benefits from salvage. And if you are going for a Zeratul army, most of the time you're trying not to lose very many units at all, anyways, with Zeratul. So the salvage shouldn't come up much.
they do come
Uh,
for projections, don't they?
oh, right. Yeah, I think maybe you get like one mineral back from a projection or something. I don't remember. But
Something
yeah,
like
I
that.
think maybe you can get them from projections. I can't remember.
Still
If you
free
can do
money.
that, then that's great.
It is great, right?
If you get free money from the projections, then that's nice, I guess. It's like I feel like if you're at the point of a difficult enough mutation to where you need any help as Zeratul, Han and Horner's not the help you're hoping for. That's the problem, I think. Really, like Zeratul's good enough to solo everything up until a point where it gets so hard, and then at that point, it's like, is Han and Horner doing anything to help me? So, yeah, it's okay. It's fine. I'd say like a 4.
Yeah, you made a pretty good argument there. Zeratul does most of the work, whereas Han and Horus mostly just there trying to play catch up. I think their partnership is going to look a bit like Gandalf and Peregrine Took. So if you've watched Lord of the Rings, you probably know what I'm talking about. If you don't, well, you should watch Lord of the Rings. What are you doing with your life? You should watch Lord of the Rings. Better yet, read Lord of the Rings. Anyway, 5, I think, out of 10 because Hot and Horror mostly plays catch up, and Zeratul does what he does and mostly just wins on his own. Sad to say, Hot and Horror is just there to get their kills, but in terms of carrying the actual mission, Zeratul does that. But yeah, for Void Rifts, they will provide value, especially for the far ones. For stuff like COVID, no, Zeratul is cannons. Hot and Horror still playing catch up. Pupagators, Zeratul as the ambushers. Again, the Hot and Horror can help, but Zeratul doesn't need it, to be honest. For things like Fatal Attraction, cannons. Things like Missile Command, monoliths, and cannons. Yeah, Zeratul just does his work, and Hot and Horror's there. As Peregrine took. Moving on to the Terran commanders. Rainer, what do you think?
Well, I think another one where it's like, what kind of drugs are you taking? The works fantastic because of medics, which already run out of energy anytime you build them, and now they can run out of energy even faster thanks to Han and Horner's units. I disagree with obviously scanner sweep. Anytime scanner sweep's mentioned, it's like, are you sure about that? I don't. Why are you using scanner sweep instead of muling? That is insane. But I mean, I guess in theory, yeah, totally can push anywhere on the map. The tactical jump thing is cool. You can both jump into a corner with your battle cruisers
Into
and
COVID.
get something done that way, skip bases, things like that. So that's nice, I guess. I feel like P3 though, like they're both a slow ramp up time at that point, and you probably don't want to be doing that. So that's a bit questionable. Yeah, I don't know. There's nothing like special about this energy. I do think they're probably fine together. I'd give them like a 4.
I would give them a 6 because at the very least, Raynor has bunkers, and they're pretty good for
Oh, that's true.
defending.
Yeah.
And siege tanks are actually really good at defending. So at the very least, I would give them a 6. Another thing that is nice is when you're playing bio as Raynor, when you lose your Marines and stuff, you will get pretty good returns on your salvage. You will get a lot more mileage out of your infantry as Raynor. And not just your infantry, your spider mines, your mules. Oh, actually, I like it. Not 7 like it. Not 7 like, but 6 like. Yeah. Because let's face it, neither of them are the strongest. And as you pointed out correctly, both of them struggle with detection. But Raider's defense is pretty solid, especially against things like Outbreak or Missile Command. They'll
Yep,
hold
that's
pretty
true.
fine. They both will struggle immensely against slim pickings. So holding my horses on giving them a 7. 6 is good for Rainer. Moving on to Swan. What do you think?
Well, Vespene Extractor is best thing in the game, really. Yeah, so true. I mean, I guess, technically, if you're P2 Han and Horner, that would be nice. I do. Speaking of P2 Han and Horner, I feel like the buff for P2 Han and Horner is just like way too weak. It should be like at least 30% cheaper instead of, I think it's like, isn't it 20% cheaper? It's like
Something
barely
like that.
anything.
Barely anything.
But yeah, the buff just needs to be stronger on that one. But anyways, that's besides the point.
Buff the
Yeah, twenty
cooldown
percent
also.
cheaper, and it's only the gas costs. Gas costs are 20% cheaper. No reduction in mineral costs. Like it should be like 30
Yeah.
or 40% gas costs. But anyways, that aside, yeah, technically that helps. I would not count that as too heavily useful. The like slowing and applying fear effects to advancing enemies against siege tank lines sounds like you've watched a few too many cutscenes and haven't played enough actual games. I don't know of co-op. I don't think that's coming up much. The air strikers providing vision for the laser drill. It's like by the time it locks on, the vision's gone. I don't know. I feel like that's not really relevant either. Yeah, heavy Goliath allow Han and Horn to focus less on anti-air. Like what? You're just making Reapers either way, right? And you just I don't have to hit the F button now. Great. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's an okay synergy. It's not great. They're both relatively slow ramp up, I'd say. Swan has the drill to kind of help with that, but it's not like it's a powerful early game usually. So I'd give it like a 4, I guess. Swan has free repair, which is nice. You can repair the Han and Horner units even faster, I guess.
Yes. I like the impact of the defense for Swan. If Reynar has good defense, Swan has really good defense. And that's probably
That's true. That's true.
their best contribution to the partnership. And whereas Rayner at least has the Dusk Wings, drop pods, battle cruisers, and the Hyperion to deal with Void Rifts in case you need it. Oh, and Rayner has Spider Mice to deal with poop trains. I guess Swan also has anti poop measures, but they're less robust against poop trains. Sort of. If you have to slow down the laser drill, that might help, but not against poop trains. Well, not enough against poop trains. They will still come and destroy your stuff. So I guess it's kind of a different sort of defense for Swan as opposed to Rainer. Regarding stuff like the usual suspects, Void Rifts, Han and Horn does that. Diffusion, Swan outranges that. Double edged. Ooh, that's just painful for both of them actually. Yeah, that's just painful for both of them. We move unseen. Both of them kind of suck with detection. Science vessels are so expensive to get, and yes, turrets are great for detection, but only when you're in your base. When you're on the map, what are you gonna do? Cry, because Raven, that's you're gonna rely on Han and Horner for detection. My Donnie. For things like transmutation, Swan's really good at transmutation. So actually, yeah, it's mostly Swan that's doing the carry. I guess Swan will like the salvage when he goes for mass rates. Oh wait, does Swan get the salvage when he salvages? Does Swan get the extra salvage when he salvages turrets? Is that something he can do for free money hacks?
I'm not sure off the top of my head. If that's a thing, then yeah, in theory, you could just have a group of SCVs constantly building and salvaging turrets. I would
You
assume it doesn't, but maybe.
just get so many flaming betties in your base that by the time the carriers arrive, you have so much money and no actual defense.
Yeah, true, true.
Oh, amazing. So overall, I would give them still 6. I think. I mean, yeah, they do synergize in some ways, but it doesn't pop out as a good as an amazing synergy. Yes, the gas drones, but I would still recommend the laser drill mastery over the gas drone any day. So it's a 6 for me. Nova, what do you think?
It's interesting. I mean, yeah, the synergy of both of them having the names of their pilots shown is incredibly good. That's like a 10 out of 10 synergy, I think. Beyond that, it is like they do cover other, each other's roles relatively well. Nova's another one where it's like, well, Nova kind of just does it all. She has good defense and good offense. Hana Horner, I guess, can help with the offense. Things like Void Rifts, Nova can have a bit more trouble getting to the Void Rifts. So having
Yeah.
having the rifts just get taken out by Han and Horner is pretty great, and then Nova can be clearing everything with like P3 Nova in the meantime, so you're not missing out on that fact, right? Um, yeah, again, like the salvage thing, it's like, well, you're really trying not to run into that with Nova. I guess maybe the Raven
Yes.
turrets they get the salvage, so maybe I don't know. I can't actually remember if they drop salvage or not, but in theory, there's that. That would be like the only way you're ever getting salvage. Ideally, it's like if you lose 3 liberators and you get a salvage back, you're not like, oh, thank goodness. You're like, oh no.
Yes,
So
I got salvage for my
yeah,
liberators that take like
yeah,
2 minutes to get a cooldown.
exactly. Yeah, you're usually limited, yeah, like with charges as much as money with Nova, anyways. So not super useful there.
Maybe if
The
you get
strike fighter
a
thing, like you could get vision and then warp, do an airlift over to an area of the map with the vision you get from strike fighters. So there's that.
there's that. You know what would be great if you lost a Robin or Liberator or any Nova unit, the salvage includes the cooldown on their production structure. Now that would be
That would be cool.
meaningful help. If
Oh
we're
yeah.
if we're talking money only, it's not enough. But if you included the build time and the cooldown time, that'd be amazing. That being said, yes, they are still sort of weak to the same. No, not really. Nova's not weak to slim pickings. She can walk around with her infiltration specialist prestige and still deal good work. Nova is able to defend just fine, but when we're talking about missile command and outbreak, she will have to shore up for too much of Hot and Horner's weakness that it might not be enough to defend both of their bases at the same time while also needing offense. So it's not as robust as Rainer and Swans, if you ask me. That being said, Nova still does good work on her own. She does have much better detection than Hot and Horner. She has airstrike, which does help. If you could just go for super duper top bars, that'd be pretty good. If you go for liberators, they will deal tremendous single target damage, but so does Hot and Horner's units. I guess the stem will be pretty helpful, right? If you lose the Helions near where Nova's units are fighting, that'll stem them up. So pretty good, I guess.
Yeah.
But in terms of overall synergy, maybe a 6. I'm just thinking
Han and Horner can shore up the anti-air problems that Nova has as well.
because of the rates and
Oh
the
yeah, Wraiths
Reapers.
or BCs, the Reapers, like Han and Horner doesn't have too bad of a time against air, in my experience. Whereas Nova can struggle a little bit more. At the very least, you're probably not able to go for your
It's actually
ideal
true.
comp of Liberators. So
It's actually true.
it at least helps.
Against COVID, both of them will suck.
Yep.
Yeah, both of them will suck against COVID. So maybe between 5 and 6. I'm thinking closer to 6 at least because of defensive drone.
I give him
I
a five because
maybe
defensive drone's good, but it
yeah
casts relatively slowly, and you've got
yeah.
a lot of units as Han and Horner.
I might
So
be
the
reaching
likelihood
here.
of it actually hitting one that matters, it's like, oh wow, it defensive droned that Reaper while I lost six others. Great.
Okay, maybe closer to 5, but I might have to adjust the other ones because Rainer and no, no, Rainer has better synergy with Han and Horner than does Nova at least because Bunkers, as I mentioned, just has better defense, and Han and Horner's biggest weakness is defense. Moving on, uh, so we missed this wiki doesn't have synergies for both Tychus and Arcturus. Tychus, what do you think about Tychus?
Yeah, I mean, there's not like a ton of synergies there. Tychus really, really good on the offense, pretty good on the defense as well. So I guess there is that. He can just leave some mercs at home. You're not getting much from salvage. You can, I guess, in theory, click a Raven onto Tychus or something, and we move unseen kind of mission, and that helps a little bit with that detection, as opposed to having to have his serious turrets or a merc that it can detect. So there's that. Beyond that, I mean, Tychus doesn't really synergize. He kind of just kills everything on his own, right? So I think it's somewhat similar to Zeratul, where it's like by the time Tychus needs help, Han and Horner's probably not providing it anyways. I'd give him like probably a 4.
I would also go with 4. I was gonna say whatever I said for Zeratul, just copy paste that for Tychus. Except Tychus has even weaker missile command and outbreak defense than does Zeratul. He doesn't have monoliths and
Yep.
just the auto cannons. Also, Tychus sucks against COVID, whereas Zeratul just cannons against COVID. So it's just Zeratul but worse. So yeah, 4 seems about right. So moving on, Arcturus, what do you think?
Well, Arcturus has great defense, and you can go for the time-honored strategy of kill everything from within your base with both of them. You have
Yeah.
ESOs and strike fighter platforms, so yeah, you can just do the win the game without ever going down the ramp method if you want to. And obviously, Minsk can do the defense for that extremely well as well. Minsk is one of the heroes that likes salvage more than others because, especially with P3, you're kind of expecting to lose units. So getting money back. Do you know if you get money back for the guns with P3? I would assume no.
You don't get the money for
Like,
the guns back because when you use the third prestige, the guns explode into a nuke. You get the money
yeah,
back from the vampires, but not the guns.
yeah, that's what I would have thought. But I'm like, you never know. Sometimes I feel like the salvage works a little strangely sometimes.
I
So,
think you get it from the
anyways,
Dogs of War. Am I crazy?
you do, yeah, you do for sure.
Pretty
So
good.
there's that. I think it's like only like one mineral a piece or something like that, though. So it's not. Although I could
Oh,
be wrong. I can't remember.
me neither.
Either way, it's something. So you do get it from Dogs of War, which is nice. Yeah, I think they're relatively good on a synergy. I don't. I think they're about on Karax's level, I'd say, basically. Although maybe a little bit better because again, you do have the against mutators where you're like, I don't want to leave my base. They both can do that perfectly well. I guess you can kind of do that with Karax and Han and Horner as well. I think ESOs are a little bit better for the never leaving my base than the top bars. But then
Yeah.
on the other hand, Karax and Han and Horner have infinite range. So say like what was it last week's mutation where dealing with the fourth set of rifts for ESOs was a bit of a pain because you can't actually use the island because it was going nuclear. Then Han and
Yeah.
Horner and Karax don't care
Hey.
about that because infinite range on top bars. So
Yeah.
yeah, I guess on that front it's better. So yeah, I'd probably say tied basically, like an 8 out of 10.
Yeah. I tried to look up StarCraft2Coop.com's resource. Doesn't actually say anything about. Well, I did do salvage. All can be useful for players that lose a lot of units. So I heard sad news today. Al Master just said that he's closing down StarCraft2Coop.com at the end of the month. That's crazy.
Well, dang it, where am I going to find my mutation list?
Oh, I have another resource for that. Oh, hold on.
Oh,
I also have a Google Sheets based weekly mutation database containing every single mutation. But yeah, StarCraft2cob.com is a pillar of the community. We can't lose this. It's pretty important. Huh. Let me read our master's exact announcement. He said that, let me pull this up here. StarCraft2coop.com will be shutting down at the end of March 2026. Oh my Donnie. Oh hey, that's my Discord. Hey. Anyway. Oh my Donnie, we need to save StarCraft2coop.com. Is it not getting enough traffic? You guys need to go to StarCraft2coop.com right now. Pause this video, or just have it playing because I will still appreciate it. But pause this video right now. Go to StarCraft2coop.com and just check it out. Just read stuff about co-op. It's pretty good. And then you can go to this place, my Google Sheet, and then just read about the invitations upcoming. Anyway, that is not relevant. What is relevant is Arcturus, for me, just does most of the work, similar to Tychus and Zeratul. Yes, there is synergy. Hot and Horrid does help out against Void specifically. Salvage, yes, pretty nice. But aside, Magma is also for defense in case Arcturus was to be extra greedy and not even put a bunker on defense. That can help, for the first wave at least. For the succeeding ones, Arcturus better have a bunker ready. or splitter aimed at where the attack wave will spawn. And then Toxic Nest, oh not Toxic Nest, that's Abathur. Contaminated Strike that as Arcturus. So yeah, not really feeling the, I don't know, it doesn't feel synergistic. It feels like Arcturus just doing his own thing and Hot and Horn are mostly trying to play catch up. Similar to Tychus and Zeratul. Is that am I tripping, or is that kind of what you feel also?
yeah, to an extent.
All right. then that's a 5 out of 10 for me, I guess. Yeah, 5 because Arcturus is great. Moving on to the Zerg Commanders. Moving on, Kerrigan. What do you think?
Yeah, I think they're actually pretty good together because Han and Horner can cover until you get Kerrigan out in the very, very early game, which is nice for Kerrigan, obviously. Like, speaking again of Rifts to Core Hall, Kerrigan can struggle quite a bit in the first attack wave for that one because it comes in so early. So Han and Horner can cover for that. The Omega Worms are good. It says, not as good because of Horner's forces, but a lot of times you're not making hardly any of those as well. The reason they're an issue is because of Galleons, more specifically, which I guess are Horner units. I don't know.
No,
Whatever
they're
you want to call those.
Mirahan.
They're air units, right? So you cannot get the Galleons through the Nidus Worms, or the Omega
Very
Worms, which is the
sad.
main problem there.
Oh
Um,
well.
beyond that, yeah, I mean, Assimilation Aura kind of stacks with the
Salvage.
salvage chance to give them both a lot more money, which is good. So I do like that. I'd say they're pretty good. I'd say like a 6.
6, 7.
Actually, I'd say a 7.
I would give them a 7. I like the synergy here. Yes, both of them are weak to double edged, but for things like COVID, I guess the malignant creep helps out a little bit, keeping your army alive. The Omegram definitely helps keep your army alive, or at least not spread it when your units die inside. But I think it's the main synergy is when Kerrigan does immobilization, maybe your army can push it and just wreck stuff. That being said, when we're dealing with, I guess Kerrigan's Omegrams will help deal with Void Reanimators and Outbreak, but not so much for Missile Command. I guess you can do spam the Omega Worms outside the base so that the missiles target those. That kind of helps, but you'll still need. Yeah, and then Hot and Horror can't repair Kerrigan's buildings. Kerrigan can't heal Hot and Horror's buildings, so not a lot of synergy. I guess Missile Command specifically. Still, I like the salvage on the dudelings. Yeah, that's pretty nice. The salvage on the dudelings gets you free money. The Omegorms also give detection. Again, one of the best detection in the game. The assimilation aura gives you free money. You can ramp up faster. The air strikers can give you vision to spot on the Megorm and then pop out the entire army. Pretty good. So maybe 7. It's a stretch 7, not really a strong 7 for me. Moving on, Zagara. What do you think?
Well, I think it is that time slot. So give me a few minutes. This Zagara is, yeah, I think a pretty good synergy on the offense. They don't really have great defense for either one. I mean, there's bio launchers and
Ding.
spine crawlers and things like that, which are okay, but they're not the greatest. The buffs that
Buffers?
you get buffs. The buffs that you get from the Hellions, like he mentions, are very good, I think, yeah, in general. And in theory, Frenzy's good, but most of the time you're probably playing with a P1 where Frenzy isn't going to affect things, or a P3 where Frenzy still isn't going to affect things. So I don't think that matters much. That's like P0 Zagara only, right? So I don't think that actually comes into play basically ever. The Lost and it's funny how they're like the downside is they both have armies designed to be lost and rebuilt. It's like, well, that's true to an extent, but then salvage is actually useful for
Is
Zagara. It's like the
actually.
most useful for Zagara because
Yeah.
she gets free units that still get salvaged. So
it's
it's pretty great. Yeah,
incredible.
so I think that's a really good synergy. It might be the best synergy Han and Horner have on that front. The problem I have is that, yeah, like the defense is not great, and then things like Slim Pickings, you do get free units as Zagara, but Slim Pickings still can kind of hurt, and Black Death can hurt. But I do
Fatal
like,
attraction.
yeah, Fatal Attraction, but like Void Rifts can be annoying as Zagara and make you go P3, even if you'd like to go P1 otherwise. Well, now you could just
Yeah.
go P1 if you're, specifically queuing with the Han and Horner because they can deal with the Rifts. So that's
Yeah.
nice, but on the offense and because of the salvage thing, it's very very good. If it was just that, I'd put them at like a 9. I think it's probably about on level with Karax and whatnot though, because you don't have like the perfect defense. You're both still having to work on that. So I don't know. I'd probably still give them an 8.
I would give them. I don't know. I'm not totally so. Yes, the salvage is great for Zagara. For defense, that's my primary concern. Neither of them are really good at defense. Biologics are okay, but they're not great. You'll still struggle against things like Void Reanimators, Outbreak, and Missile Command. Black Death will still make you both suffer. The just die, yes, will be just painful for both of you. For mutators like environmental mutators, both of you will suffer a lot because you're both army based. Unless Zagara goes for the third prestige, in which case it will be mostly Zagara doing the work. Mutators like Barrier, Zagara will suffer a bit more. I guess the salvage will help out. That's great. But if you don't deal the damage, you'll still run out. For mutators like Missile Command, both of them suffer. Voiders, yes, Hot and Horn are great. That's just Hot and Horn doing their thing. Zagara can help out with the third prestige hero unit. That's grid. That's great. Grid. That's great. But I'm seeing a few more weaknesses than I am synergies, like covering each other's weaknesses specifically. They amplify each other's strengths, but they don't really shore up each other's weaknesses, I don't think. For that reason, I
That's fair.
think I would put them closer to 5. They're not bad together. They amplify strengths, but don't cover weakness. For me, that's an important part of synergy. So I would give them closer to 5. I totally understand where you're coming from with the 8, though. When they're great, they're great. But when things get tough, oh boy, they get tough. Moving on, Abathur. What do you think?
Does lose units sometimes, but you don't want to lose them too often. So there is that. The Queen healing, it's like that's kind of it's similar to the medics thing where it's like, well, I'd rather they be using their healing cooldowns on my brutalisks and not your stupid reaper. Like I'm not sure that that's exactly a synergy much as it's an anti-synergy.
Hmm.
The power spike in the late game thing I think is a little incorrect. I think Abathur Abathur's has like a pretty even power curve, I'd say. You get out the the brutalisks, and then you relatively quickly after that
Leviathans.
get leviathans, and then you relatively quickly after that get queens and vipers, and then you can add in whatever, if you're going guardians or devourers or swarm hosts. You have like a pretty flat curve, so to speak, up to your top level of power, which is a good thing for Abathur because it covers everything, right? Generally speaking. The mend is pretty good, I will say. Not just because of the upfront heal, but because it does that little bit of heal over time. It's not that helpful with like Abathur's units a lot of times because Brutalists have just such a giant health pool. But with those Reapers and everything, you cast a mend, as you start taking damage in the fight. That's going to be a significant amount of tick healing throughout the whole fight for like Reapers and things
That's
like that. So I
true.
do like that quite a bit. Defense, Abathur's solid-ish at because you can spam out spore crawlers usually, and you have toxic nests, so you have defense okay. I wouldn't say it's the best, but it'll do the trick in a lot of situations. But it's definitely not like Karax level. I think I'd probably give them like I'm floating between a 7 and a 6. I'd probably say like a 6.
For me, Abathur. By the way, I would like to make an addendum to the earlier comment. There is one thing where Zagar really helps out. That's skill bots, because that's what Zagar is for.
Yeah,
For Abathur, I do like their defense. I just park Swarmhosts at home, put a
that's true.
Toxic Nest off, auto detonate, and just point the Swarmhost at it. It will keep sending locusts at it, and that'll mostly handle the defense. That'll solve Outbreak, that'll solve Void Reanimators, maybe even some of the missile command. Not really, but it will solve 2 out of 3, which is not bad. For Slim Pickings, you don't really suffer as Abathur. It'll be mostly Abathur carrying, and Hara and Horo desperately rushing to 10 airstrikers, and that'll be their entire value for the game. For things like Void Rifts, both of them are really good at Void Rifts, so Han and Horner's contribute. Like I said, there are two guys who don't really benefit immensely from Han and Horner's anti-Void Rift, and one of them is Abathur, the other one being Tychus, of course. Abathur has Brutalisks, they can go for the Void Rifts. They synergize really well in terms of shutting down the Void Rifts before they spawn a single unit. Other than that, it's just deal with whatever trickle comes in, and you don't really need to go out on the map. And I guess preserve your strength. Vipers, I think, are one of the best ways that Abathur can synergize with Han and Horner, because the problem with Han and Horner's units is they die. So if you cast Stop Hitting My Ally on Amon's forces, your ally will do that thing that I said copyists need to do. Not trade, but gain value over time. So if Abathur uses his Vipers profusely and keeps them on their ally for long enough, the synergy, I think, on the offense will make Hara and Horner really shoot up in value, because they won't lose units as much as they normally do. And that's pretty big for a commander like Hara and Horner. That being said, once they lose a fight, ooh boy, it'll cascade pretty quickly, especially if your entire fleet of Reapers goes down to like a single storm, which can happen because they do clump up. So if Abathur is all point, they can preserve value for a lot longer, but not infinitely, I don't think. Which is why I can't really give them an 8. But a 7 I'm totally okay with, because the Viper is that good. Also, as you mentioned, Mend, pretty good at preserving value, which will be helpful a little bit against Black Death, COVID. But when COVID is on, it's really just Hara and Horner just going up to 10 airstrikers, and Abathur being out of the map because he has other prestiges, like the first prestige. He can still push. For things like Just Die, it's mostly Abathur doing the work. For things like Slim Pickings, mostly Abathur doing the work. It's going to be a lot of mostly Abathur doing the work, isn't it?
Yep.
So yeah, I can go with 7, because there are some ways that they can help each other out. The Locusts, I think, still provide salvage. Less helpful for Abathur because his gaining resource is mostly biomass, but getting some gas would be helpful for I guess, getting upgrades and stuff. So yeah, 7 is fine. Moving on, Stukov, what do you think?
Well, Stukov does have decent defense if you're not playing P3 as the bunkers and the siege tanks, which are pretty good. But realistically, obviously, you're especially if you're solo queuing, you're probably getting a P3 Stukov, even if it's a
Mhm.
bad choice on whatever mutation you're up on or whatever.
Mhm.
That said, he does shore up some of Han and Horner's issues with things like missile command, COVID, stuff like that. You're not really doing much as Han and Horner, but he can help.
Salvage.
As far as like actual, yeah, salvage. Salvage doesn't work on the little infested, right? Surely not. So you're not getting any benefit really as Stukov unless you're like P1. If you are P1, I think they can synergize pretty well together. Yeah, I don't know. It's not there's nothing crazy synergistic happening here. They just both kind of do what they do, and that'll get it done sometimes. The P3, you are going to tend to like get the clumping problems where it's like there's just too many units in the spot fighting, and your units aren't doing anything, or their units aren't doing anything, or your Reapers are just getting pushed across the map and you don't really get to choose where they get to go, that kind of stuff. So
Yeah,
that's a bit of an issue.
getting
But
Stukoved
yeah, so yeah, I think you're very prone to getting Stukov. Horner, I think, would be like the P2. It's pretty good here
is pretty
because
good.
you can kind of shore up their lack of high single target damage. That's pretty helpful. Yeah, obviously, the infested Marines, aren't as good against big targets sometimes. So yeah, I don't know. I think it is going to be another one of those ones where it's like P3, you'll help in the early game maybe, and then Stukov will do everything. So yeah, it's okay. I'd say it's like a 4.
I would give one consideration to Stukov, and that is the ocular symbiote, because, like I said, the Raven I would consider as one of the less impactful detection in the game. But if you put an ocular symbiote on it, its vision range increases, and therefore its detection range is also improved. In fact, you can cast Ocular Symbiote on battle cruisers, and that's probably the better value. For Hada and Horner's contribution, the main thing holding Stukov's infested hordes back are static defense and siege tanks, and Colossus and High Templar. If you delete those with your air strikers, Stukov's pushes will be much more effective since they are not fighting splash units anymore. So I would give more consideration toward that. And as you mentioned correctly, the Stukov waves do a lot of help against defensive issues that Hot and Horner will definitely have. That being said, they're both still weak to, well, not both still weak to, because yeah, in the early game, Stukov kinda will struggle against Pupagators, and Hot and Horner can definitely shore that up. So yeah, that's pretty good. In the late game, once you get your critical mass as Stukov, you can fight Pupagators as long as they're not sped up. If you're not sped up Pupagators, you can point about 20 infested Marines at them, and they will eventually deal with the problem. They will. If you're able to get critical mass. But against transmutation, ooh, that's probably their biggest glaring weakness. Also, their second biggest glaring weakness is environmental. They're both army based, so they both kind of don't like it when they have to force to be moving around all the time. Stukov can go Diamondbacks, that's better. But if your army as hot and horny is getting Stukoved and you can't move out of the nuke, you can see the big red circle. You're desperately trying to click your army out, and Stukov's army is like, nope, you come with us. You will definitely come with them to infested heaven and not be admitted because you're not infested. So, there is some help that they provide each other. I would say maybe 6 because the Ocular Symbiote is good. The targeting of enemy static defense, pretty good, but not amazing. So, yeah, I feel like 6 is right. So, moving on. Dehaka, what do you think?
Yeah, like they say, they don't cover each other's weaknesses, but they work well together. You don't get a whole bunch of benefit from salvage as Dahaka generally, and I mean, I guess in theory, there's a lot of times where you are playing with a Dahaka who instantly spams the healing upgrades, which are actually pretty useful if you're Han and Horner. They shouldn't be, but a fair amount of people on the ladder do that, or on the queue do that. So,
Doo doo.
there is that. That would be the biggest benefit is if they happen to get one or two of those upgrades in the early game. That helps give your Reapers a lot of survivability. The rest of it, it's like, yeah, defense is not great for either of them. So that would be a big problem. And there's not much that they're like directly synergizing on, I don't think. So I'd say probably like another 4.
For me, lurkers are probably enough defense for stuff like outbreak and void reanimators. Probably enough. But when it comes to stuff like missile command, yeah. So basically, the thing I said about Tychus, copy paste that. That's what you have. 4. I said 4 for Tychus, right?
I think so.
Yeah. So whatever I said for Tychus, just copy paste that. That's your Dahaka. Finally, not mentioned here, Stet Boy. What do you think?
Well, Green Zone, obviously great for Han units in general. Salvage, pretty good for Stetman. He's another one of those ones where it's like units are more expendable, because especially like Zerglings, because you get them back, like 1 Zergling for every 4 you lose, 2 you lose, something like that.
Something like
Anyways,
that.
getting the salvage on top of that, well, that's cake, so that's nice. And yeah, I mean the zones. It's more Stetman carrying Han and Horner, I'd say, but the salvage is nice. Beyond that, Void Rifts, excellent. Han and Horner, can take care of that, and then Stetman can take care of literally everything else. So that's pretty good.
Poopagators.
Yeah, I
Stet
think
Boy.
yeah, propagators,
Yeah.
pretty good as well. So yeah, I like it. I think it's pretty good. I'd say like a 6.
I would say whatever I said for Zeratul, that's what I would say for Stet Boy. I think I gave Zeratul a 5 because Zeratul is really good. So yeah, whatever I said for Zeratul, copy paste that for Stet Boy. Stet Boy does things. Because I did actually mention for Zeratul, the demote dude also buffs allied units, so Han and Horde does get some help. Same deal with the zones, the stat zones. They do help. They keep your units alive, but in co-op a lot of the time the damage comes from like storms and siege tank shots and reaver shots. So the green zone, yeah, maybe, but not that much. It does help a lot against COVID though. That's the main thing. For most other forms of damage, the green zone just helps you survive for longer, but doesn't really get you as much stacking ability as Abathur's Vipers. But when we're talking COVID, Han and Hornet's units are not high max health, so they will be able to out heal COVID in the green zone. That's pretty big. You can just run Reapers in the green zone as long as Stet Boy does not turn off the green zone. You should be fine. So you're kind of screwed when he goes for Infestor. So yeah, there we go. Anyway, yeah, what I said for Zeratul, that applies for Stet Boy as well. 5 out of 10. All right, I think that's about it. Did I miss any, Commander?
Don't believe so.
All right, hope you enjoyed that. Thank you for watching. If you have an idea for it also, please leave it in a comment. I will see you guys next time.